Oh.
Couldn't help yourself, could
Always
you?
seems appropriate. It's just the right start to this stream.
That's hilarious.
Uh-oh. Just the right start.
Crazy echo.
That is typically YouTube open at the same time somewhere.
Crazy echo.
That is typically YouTube
Ooh.
open at the same time. That's me. There we go.
There you go.
Couldn't help myself, and then caused some problems as well. Welcome to a very exciting time. We are very, very happy to be able to announce the first batch of Vogu
shorts.
We're going into making the first batch of shorts. Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that came out of this process, and if you're watching this without knowing what we're talking about, there's this amazing collection of characters called the Vogu. We're creating comics and other media with these characters, and the first batch of short stories in an anthology series are about to be announced as the first greenlit characters in the series. These characters are all owned by people within the Vogu community, initially as NFTs, and now moving into the world of entertainment, which is very exciting. There were so many great story submissions. I mean, we always say this, but like so many great story submissions. You Vogos are some creative MFers.
It's impressive. And I think, there were like close to 40 people submitting in this time around, which is amazing. I mean, it's just fantastic. And the characters, the array of stories that were pitched this time would just made me so happy. It was crazy.
Yeah. I wish we could make all of them, honestly. Like there really weren't any submissions that I couldn't see like, oh, that could be really cool. And there were a number that didn't make it into this round that I sincerely hope come back into the next, round or two. Because I think, there's just so much territory to explore in this world, in this universe. So many great ideas, so many great characters.
Mm-hmm.
This came up in looking through some of the submissions. Just as a side note, I always gotta shout out Jason Trinidad, the artist and the creator of these original characters and a lot of the concepts around this world. And sometimes people talk about the level of detail in these generative collections. So what it takes to put a collection like this together, where all the pieces fit just perfectly with each other so that you can mix and match all these different elements to create these unique characters and a collection of almost 8,000 different unique variations. And one of the things I hadn't noticed, and it turns out a couple other people hadn't noticed either, is seeing some of these side by side. There are some of these Vogus which are holding devices. And so I would say 99 out of 100 of the collections out there. And I'm looking at you, Azuki. I'm, just going to go ahead and say it, who are really phenomenal collections, really fantastic art in many cases. Like they would have one hand pose and then just swap out, the thing that the character is holding. So it's a sword, it's a, stick, it's a, whatever, one hand pose. Not
I like that you went from sword to stick. That was like staff, maybe something a little more dramatic. Like, here, have a twig. No,
fish. I've been playing a lot of Zelda. You get a lot of twigs. The fish is one. But not Jason. Not Jason. Jason has different positions perfectly modeled, anatomically, robot anatomically correct to the exact size, shape, and position of each item that's being held. And it was just one of those details that I was like, pretty fantastic.
Yeah. Pretty great.
Chris Placco here also agrees it's a stat.
Yeah, exactly. I think there could be consensus around that,
I mean, I'm fine. I'll concede. But with the caveat, playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, which is fantastic, and one of the early things that you get to fight with is a tree branch. So that's maybe where my mind is at.
Again, branch versus stick. I feel like Thor in Open Shield grabbed a branch from an oak, right? Like totally acceptable. A branch, you can club someone to death with a branch. If you're attacking someone with a stick, they're probably a poodle, and it's just not going to go well.
I feel like this is a personal challenge to find a cool way to integrate a stick into a story now, and I'm gonna accept that challenge.
It'll be like Mythic Quest and the shovel and the pirate.
That's right. The most powerful item in the game is now going to be a stick. All right. Well,
Harry Potter and his stick of destiny, and
the stick of destiny, exactly. So, yes, very excited. I think without a lot of fanfare, again, just a ton of fantastic submissions here. So, what are we going to talk about? We're going to announce the first 6 stories that are greenlit going into production. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of what the process and thinking is for the size and scope of these particular stories. Some of you will have heard this before. Some of you may be a little fresher to it. Even if you've heard it before, hopefully it's a good refresher. And then we're going to talk about kind of tactical production next steps, kind of what to expect, how this moves forward. And kind of what the process will be from here. So with that, I'm going to put a tweet out right after this stream as well that also announces the winners and stuff that you guys can share, and hopefully you will. And I also hope the rest of the community and people that submitted will help celebrate those that did get into this first round, because it's going to be so cool. Certainly for those that stories got voted up, but I hope for everyone to see these come to life. So without further ado, Adam, do you want to announce? Should we go back and forth? You want to announce?
I think let's go back and forth. It's gonna be fun. So initially I know as well, just to address it, we had talked about doing like a separate poll or something to get the winners and as we looked at that, it was super limited on Twitter. We would have had to have Sorry, I've got to actually shift my vocabulary around that. We would have had to send it on the site. Like, it just got needlessly complicated. And as we dug into the likes, it became very obvious. Like, great, yes, these are the ones that kind of lead in the pack at their stage in terms of the likes and the comments. So let's stick with those. And then, like we said before, I think we're refining this process. So if there are concerns, thoughts, anything, come to us. If you have an idea for a better way of doing it in the future, God, please let us know, because best idea wins always. So with that, the first one would be Rommel Smith with the Space Ramen Heist, which does make me very happy, because I know he's a couple of times now. There have been like these kind of food themed things, I think, coming into some of his stories, these kind of comedic elements to it. And I love that. And I'm really glad that the community liked that idea, because it made me giggle as well. So congrats. Yes, Rommel. Yes. First up, Space Ramen.
Very fun. Very excited. Number 2 is Chris Placco, part of the as I understand it, kind of core collective of Vogu storytellers, both Rommel and Chris. So very excited about that as well. In the Squad Goals Redacted storyline as well.
Very nice.
Huzzah, indeed.
Number 3, Lady Valor, man's best friend. Love the idea. Love the mutt and the tar going together. I just feels great. It's gonna be fun. It'll be great.
And notably, I think the only one that has a mutt in it, which I think is going to be quite fun.
Yes. I wonder if there's like a Cujo you could tell with mutts.
Ooh, interesting. Yes. I mean, I feel like there could be, mutt adventures in and of themselves, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Very cool. And then next up is Terra Mecha, which is going to be an interesting outlier in this batch, and I think the best possible way, in that I've actually had a longer conversation with the creator of Terra Mecha, and he's got a very big story that he's also creating that features this really kind of unique, what he's essentially already created as a one-of-one character in this larger story that's now also going to be in this short story. So there's kind of a cool crossover already with this, idea around these kind of intergalactic angels and a particular take on the monk element here, which actually gonna be a few different kind of monk and samurai elements in these stories, which I'm very excited about.
Oh yes.
So gonna be very cool to see that one in the mix here as well.
Yeah, and again, like, yeah, monk robots, robot monks, robot samurai. It's all good. It's
all
just
good.
it's just all good.
Just
yeah, Seven Samurai with Tars. I think that's what we need to see. Not that that's my favorite movie or anything. Next up is Urian.
I always think it's Urian, but
Urian. Urian works.
I could be wrong about that.
It works either which way, but yeah, no, it's a cool name. Urian, thank you. Ronin, with your Ronin story. So that is going to be, we're gangbusters into that. Love that. It's going to be just great. I think another kind of piece of this world to explore. It's really fun.
Yeah. And last but definitely not least, a slightly later submission, which made me very happy that it rose up to one of these green lights, is Cloudhopper 69, with the one that got my attention, titled "Dodgeball Just Got Lethal."
Yep.
And it looks like there's a little Lady Valor flavor in this one as well. So very excited by that.
Yeah. Love that. No, the kind of, I don't know, Rollerball was remade as a movie a few years ago, and I believe it was terrible. But the original Rollerball was quite good, and it definitely had Rocket Ball, or whatever it ends up being called, definitely had Rollerball vibes to me. So no, great fun. Love that.
So that's the first batch. That's the top 6 in this round. There were a bunch of other ones that we loved, that, as I said, would love to see become shorts and more as we continue. So by all means, keep bringing these ideas, keep bringing these stories. We will do subsequent rounds over time. There'll be more opportunities to see these characters appear in various places as we continue as well. So, if you're not in this first batch, do not be discouraged. Please just keep coming back. We'll ultimately, ideally, get to all of them.
We want to get through. Exactly.
And so with that, whether you're in this batch or not, let's talk about a little bit about kind of comics in general, thinking about kind of how do you take this story idea, which has been fleshed out to one degree or another at this stage, and how do we recommend that you think about bringing that into a format where we can go bring on an unbelievable artist, like we like to do, who is going to then illustrate this story. And we have a handful of artists already standing by, kind of waiting for the first scripts to be completed. So as always, you guys are going to be thrilled with the final product. I think we've seen this with every project, but it feels like there's a level of excitement with Vogu for artists that see this that is near the top, where it's just like, oh yeah, I want to do something with this. So
I think it speaks to the kind of, I was about to say uniqueness, and I know I hate that phrase. I think it speaks to the unique nature of this of this project and of this collection.
The aesthetic that
exactly. It's just you don't see this. It's not, that's another cool character. It's another cool animal. It's not plenty of those, and not to cast shade on any of them, because there are a lot of great ones. But there is, I think, something about this that is going to really get people excited. And I think the fact that it's kind of 2 pages as opposed to a longer commitment means, again, hopefully we get kind of even higher caliber than usual, array of artists to come and play, because they can come and do it quickly and enjoy it and do something super cool.
Yeah, and we found that with Wanderers. It's one of the reasons we've shifted, in these kind of initial 2-pagers as opposed to longer stories. Number one, we can do more quicker with more people in the community, and number 2, it allows us to attract artists that we would not normally be able to get, just because they have, many of the artists that we want are doing other projects, so their time is hard to get a hold of. But when it's a lower quantity, we're often able to attract higher quality, let's say, just because of the time commitment. So it's a win-win all the way around. So let's talk about kind of the format. So we all are familiar with traditional comics. If you've never written for comics before, there are a handful of kind of key things that we recommend that you keep in mind. And the number one thing, which I think is what we see is the hardest for some people to kind of wrap their head around, is that especially with these short comics, we've basically got somewhere between 10 and 14 panels, at the 14 at the very high end, to
aiming for kind of 12.
Yeah, aiming for 12. But if it can be done in less, you just means you get bigger images on the page, which is awesome. And if you need more, then you can squeeze a couple more in there as necessary. So we are having to find ways to really condense these stories down. And so what we recommend in that case is that you really think about what is a key sequence, a key moment, a key montage, even, perhaps, that tells the piece of this larger story that you have in your mind in a way that can be very compelling and attracts people to these characters and to their kind of the situation that they're in, the world that they're in. So you gotta kind of rely on the audience to bring something to this as well, but it's your job as the writer and the storyteller and the creator of this story to find that moment, to find that sequence, which is critical, in some way to the story that you want to tell. And I think in many cases, it's absolutely fine to think about this as a way to introduce the, okay, there we go. Sorry, to introduce the character, the situation, whatever's going to drive this larger story that you have in your mind. It's fine to think about this as let me, almost if you think about a TV show that you love, many of our favorite shows have kind of what we call a cold open. There's something at the beginning of the show which is designed to get your attention, to make you want more, to sit through the opening credits, even though you probably, like me, hit the button to skip them now. But it's that kind of critical piece that you go oh yes, please, I need more of this. And so I think that's part of the job, part of the goal potentially is that to give the reader, the person that's going to be interacting with this, that feeling of I want more of this character, I want more of this story. And at the same time, leave them satisfied with oh, this was a nice little bite of this experience. And I feel like I got something that was in some way complete in and of itself. So Adam, say
it is
more.
No, it's 100%. It is that balance, right? So it is, you hinting at a larger story, a larger character, bigger things, while still feeling satisfying. And I think that's the juggling act. And I've certainly with what we're seeing coming in for the Wanderers, 100% that's being hit, which is great. Yeah. And it just requires occasionally a bit of finessing. The really fun thing about, one of the kind of simple, as hard as it is, kind of condensing a story like this into this way, into such a tight time frame, the benefit of it though is that you can get away to some degree with just a cool idea, a cool sequence, it can be a joke, it can be basically a setup and a payoff over 2 days. That is something you can do, and because it's so quick, if all you leave the audience with is that was cool, great, that's enough. That's awesome. That you don't have to satisfy for a lot kind of beyond that. And so I think there can be certainly something a little liberating about that, as you start to well, no, I need to get in this, and I got to get the character this. And goes, oh no, you just flip it around and have some fun with it. Make again, set up, payoff, done. It's in terms of a joke, that's the format. And so I think it works very well in these 2 pages. And it'll be great to see these coming in over the next couple of weeks as it was with the Wanderers.
Yeah. 100%. And then the other thing to think about just for the format itself, for just the art form of comics, is that, when you think about each individual panel that combined are going to tell these stories. So if you've got, between 10 to 14 moments, each panel is a moment in time. It's really the thing that comics are distinct in from just about any other entertainment medium, is that you're doing kind of 2 things simultaneously in traditional comic storytelling. You're capturing a moment in time, and you're also using the space between those moments in time as part of the storytelling, where the reader is going to fill in what happened between this image and that image. So if you've got, you can use that to dramatic effect. So it can be a series of moments that are just one after the next, after the next, after the next, which tell a very linear story. Or you can very cleverly, think about like, oh, panel 1, here's a character being disintegrated. I'm making this up as I off the top of my head, but like, here's a character being disintegrated by a ray gun, but very noticeably they're wearing a red hat. And then panel 2, here is a character in a red hat that is, flying away on a spaceship with a caption box, which goes like, I'll miss that clone, but he was fun, or whatever. So I mean, there are ways to just kind of think about how do you connect each of those things visually, whether it's actually linear or not, but you're kind of using each of those moments as a building block that, as you see it all come together, creates this sense of time and movement and kind of momentum from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the other thing to look at is always the amount that can end up on the page is always surprisingly less than you think it can be. So you're always like, oh, it's going to be great. And I am such the guilty party here, having just done kind of going through the Wanderers right now, doing some polishes on the Bushidos last couple of episodes as well, like, and realizing like, oh, bloody hell, I have completely overwritten this. There's no way in hell we're going to fit this much dialogue on the page. But I'd rather have more dialogue and then pare it down than suddenly feel like, oh, I don't have quite enough story, and now I have to try and add something, because that can feel kind of false in its own, in a very different, I think, much more damaging way. So I would definitely encourage the slightly kind of overwritten that can be pared down versus the other way. But we've also seen, certainly with the Wanderers, it's like, oh, there were pitches that came in that were like 3 lines and actually turned into this great kind of fun little thing. So it can, it goes every which way, but it is that there is both a kind of there'll be a winnowing process now, getting your idea into this 10 to 14 boxes. And then once the art is done, there'll be a second winnowing process, getting the dialogue to fit.
Yep, for sure. And we will bring you on this ride the entire time. So, I know several of you that are in this batch, actually are also in that Wanderers batch. And so we've just gone through this process together. Several of you are not. So, we can also hopefully kind of lean on, the experience of those that have just gone through it to also, weigh in where it's helpful, with the other people that, maybe are a little newer to this process. And of course, we'll be doing that as well. Tangible next steps. Actually, one last thing to say, as you think about now taking these stories and putting them into comic form, the other kind of big thing that we tend to see as people are learning to write for comics, is the tendency to try to do too much in a single panel. And so very often the idea, it seems like it should work, that someone could be, running through the forest, and I don't know, running through the forest while at the same time, well, now I can't think of a good example. The one we always use, I was trying to do something new here, but the one we always use is
running through the forest, pulling their sword out, turning around and like swiping at them.
There you go. Yes. Right? So the point is, a compound action can't be done in a single panel. So if you need your story to include character 1 does action 1 and then does action 2 and does action 3, those have to be, generally 3 separate panels, unless you can think of a very clever way to combine them. But what we often find people try to do is, write the way that you would for a movie or animation, where it's, character 1 comes into a room smoking a cigarette, sits down and crosses their legs. In that's very easy to write for something that's going to be filmed or animated. Like, that's all one, easy move for the character to do. But to convey that in comics, that would be 4 panels. So that's the other thing to just kind of keep in mind, is, again, just kind of really picking those kind of magic moments that, bring us through the story and tell the story. And then my final comment on that, just to hopefully kind of drive this point home, is that in that scenario, you can, again, rely on the space between panels to help with those kinds of challenges. So if you have a character walk into the room smoking a cigarette and you want them to have that sequence of events, they walk in, they sit down, they cross their legs, you literally have them walk in smoking in panel 1. Panel 2, they're already sitting down with their legs crossed, and the cigarette is now, stubbed out in the ashtray next to them on the chair. Our minds as readers will understand the things that had to happen between those two images to get us there. So I think that's the other way to kind of think about it.
Very much so. Very much so. I'm also a big fan. This is getting a little more detailed and technical than we need to. I'm a big fan of the insert, the close-up, the super close-up, small panel to take you through something.
Yeah.
Also a very filmmaking trick, and it is great because it doesn't take up much room. You can kind of sneak in a couple of extra panels, but it, when judiciously done, will help bridge those gaps even better.
10 to 14 panels.
Yes, exactly. 14 panels with a couple of including a couple of these close-ups.
Potentially be a couple of inserts. Yes. Yeah. All right. So next step. So we're going to now take this kind of actual production process away from Twitter and bring it into the Macroverse Discord. That is discord.gg/Macroverse. So we will set each of these up in its own thread. We'll tag you. If you're not already in there, please make sure you get in there so that we can tag you. But again, macroverse.gg/Discord. And I have that here somewhere to put up on screen. There we go.
There it is.
Discord.gg/Macroverse. I said it backwards just a moment ago. Discord.gg/Macroverse. So come in. We'll set these up in particular threads. We'll tag you. And then in that thread, that's where we would ask you to start to take the concept that you pitched that's now been greenlit and to break it into those 10 to 14 moments. And so I think a good way to approach that generally is literally just a 1 through 10, 1 through 12, 1 through 14 list of, these are the moments. I wouldn't necessarily worry about dialogue at this point. I wouldn't necessarily worry about, elaborate description unless that's something you're already comfortable with in this process. But just, trying to figure out what are those panels that are going to tell this story or this piece of the story that you're going to focus on. So I would start there, and then, we'll give feedback and help. Other people in the community may give, some feedback and help. And our goal here is just to get this in shape enough that we can then hand it off to one of these phenomenal artists that would love to come in and illustrate it. And at that point, your script will be given to the artist. The artist will bring their own kind of flavor and interpretation to it. So I always want to make sure people know that, this is a good thing. What we have found over the years is that, Adam and I both tend to write in more of a traditional kind of screenplay comic hybrid. So it's like we're writing comics, but we're still kind of using a screenplay format, which is not a necessity by any means. It's just because we had more experience writing for screenplays than we did for comics initially in the early days. And so, that's just the way that we've approached it. But there is no set, it must be this particular format for comics. It's one of the unique things about comics is lots of people do it in lots of different ways. But I think the point is that, as you get this to a place where you can then hand it to the artist, we encourage the artist to, reinterpret it to some degree, to bring a creative, artistic, directorial even, eye to it. So they'll take what you've written and definitely deliver your story, but do it in a way that is through their lens, through their style. And then what you'll see through this process is you'll get to see the layouts and kind of the early stages of that process. We'll share that with you in Discord as well. And so you'll kind of be in this whole production cycle as we go from idea to finish short. And then you'll have a chance at that layout stage to weigh in with like, oh, well, okay, I see that you made this close up, but I really need it to be a medium shot so that we see that this particular piece of gear is there that, ties into something in the story later on, like something that matters for the story or the larger, concept. Like those are the things that we'll want to focus on changing. But we found so many times, I always use Steven as an example who does Deadtown. so many times we would give him a script with like, it's this setup, this scene unfolds in this particular way. And he would come back with like, well, I did that in 3 panels instead of 7. And we'd be like, yep, that works way better.
Great. Yep.
Thank you. And, we'll go with your version. And then that may necessitate a little bit of rewriting, but it's always better for it. And so I think that I think to realize with comics, like, any sort of collaborative creative medium is that it is the collaboration. It is the sum of the creative inputs when embraced that make for the strongest, end result.
I think for me, it's very much this. It was this realization. I think when you're writing for comics, you are this interesting combination often of writer and director, because you are kind of obviously you're doing the screenplay and the story, but you're also framing the shots. You're talking about this. I think potentially I go into unnecessary detail on that stuff, but it's plenty of people do. It's like, great, here's how the shots lay out. But then you're handing it off to an artist who is filling the role of director and cinematographer. So it becomes this hybrid between the two of you, where you're both filling this kind of middle directorial role and letting them put their stamp on it. Typically makes it better, but also gets them more engaged in the story and what it is, which you want anyway, because people will do their best work when they're excited.
Yeah, 100%. So you'll get layouts, you'll have a chance to weigh in there, and then generally we'll let the artist take it, all the way to finishes at that point. So you'll get, finished art, sometimes black and white art, and then color art, sometimes all the way to colors, depending on how the artists work. And then at that point, we'll want to come together with each of you for a final script pass. And so our favorite way to do that is we'll deliver kind of a V1 of essentially putting whatever was in the script on the page. And then ideally we come together, on a live stream or a live call and hone the dialogue, hone the specific text that's on the page, to really make sure it fits, with the episode in its, hopefully most ideal way. And then the episodes are done, and they'll see a release through our mobile app. They'll ultimately see a release on our digital platform as, in collectible NFT editions. And we've got some other, perks and surprises and things that we think people will like as well. So those will be the main things. And then should the Vogu series go into print, which we do expect the main series to do as well, we may find that it works to put these shorts. I don't want to promise this, but I think it'd be very cool if it works out this way to be able to put these shorts as little backup features in each of the main comic series as well. So those are the things we're looking at as far as where do they go once they're done. And of course, a big part of this process and a big part of why we're excited about it is the opportunity to share, any revenue that's generated and, bring that back to the participation that people have brought into this process with us. So I'm very excited about that. And man,
off we go.
I'm glad we're at this point.
Yes, very exciting. Thank you all. It's been fun to kind of starting down this road. I know we kind of headed off in this direction a couple of months ago at Vogu. Excited to be kind of in action and going, because it's such a great project and there's so much more to be done with this that we can't talk about right now.
Yes. So there will be a tweet going out momentarily, again, celebrating all of this, the first batch of greenlit stories. Congratulations to those of you that are in this first batch. Stick with us. If you didn't make it into the first batch, there will be more opportunities. Regardless, come into the Discord, participate, see the process, and there will be more opportunities around other projects, all that good stuff. Our goal is to be doing this all the time. So, we're kind of kicking each project off with a first season or a first batch. But our goal is to just have this be an ongoing thing. So as we continue to ramp up, there will be more opportunities. So again, discord.gg/macroverse and look for the tweet. Please do retweet it, post, celebrate each other, really help spread the word, let people know that the Vogu are alive and kicking and making their way into the world. And
live kicking, leaking oil. It's
And Cloud 69.
Yes.
Stoked for this and your story as well, man. Very,
Yep.
very cool. So with that, let's sign off and
have a great weekend. Enjoy the World Cup.
Yeah.
For those of you that
enjoy the World Cup
fans.
if you are so inclined. And because I can't help myself, we'll go out this way.